Pablo Emilio Escobar Gaviria was born on 1 December 1949 in the small village of El Tablazo near Rio Negro, Antioquia department. He belonged to the Paisa ethnic subgroup. His family was of Spanish origin, specifically from the Basque country, and also had Italian roots. He was the second of 7 children and grew up in poverty. His father was a small farmer and his mother was a teacher, and his siblings in order of birth were Roberto de Jesus, Elosito, Gloria Inés, Argamiro, Alba Marina, Luz Maria, and Luis Fernando Escobar. Started his criminal career with his gang with small scams, thefts, and after stealing tombstones, sandblasting their inscriptions, and reselling them. After dropping out of college, Escobar began to join gangs to steal cars. Escobar soon became involved in violent crime, employing criminals to kidnap people who owed him money and demand ransoms, sometimes tearing up ransom notes, even when Escobar had received the ransom. His most famous kidnapping victim was businessman Diego Echevarria Misas, who was kidnapped and eventually killed in the summer of 1971. Escobar received a $50,000 ransom from the Echevarria family. His gang became well known for this kidnapping. Escobar would repeat the same process with drug lord Fabio Restrepo, kidnapping and murdering him in 1975. After Escobar would later begin to work for Alfredo Gómez López, Don Capone, the king of smuggling in Colombia. Escobar soon entered the drug trade by smuggling marijuana to the United States under the patronage of Griselda Blanco. After the end of the marijuana boom, Escobar began working as an intermediary who bought cocaine paste in Colombia, Bolivia, and Peru, to later resell it to his partners, the Ochoa brothers, traffickers in charge of taking it to the United States. Escobar had been involved in organized crime for a decade when the cocaine trade began to spread in Colombia in the mid-1970s. Escobar's meteoric rise caught the attention of the Colombian Security Service, who arrested him in May 1976 on his return from drug trafficking in Ecuador. DS agents found 39 kilograms of cocaine in the spare tire of Escobar's car. Escobar managed to change the first judge in the lawsuit and the process expired, apparently by bribed the second judge, so he was released along with other prisoners. Despite this, the case was reopened by Judge Mariela Espinosa, who also dropped the investigation due to threats against her life. The following year, the agents who arrested Escobar were assassinated. Escobar continued to bribe and intimidate Colombian law enforcement agencies in the same fashion. His carrot-and-stick strategy of bribing public officials and political candidates in Colombia, in addition to sending hitmen to murder the ones who rejected his bribes, came to be known as silver or lead, meaning money or death. The Medellín Cartel and the Cali Cartel both managed to bribe Colombian politicians and campaigned for both the conservative and liberal parties. Although the difference between the two cartels was that the Medellín Cartel used its money or death law through a huge army of hitmen, the Cali Cartel preferred to use bribes by having politicians, journalists, police officers, army officers, judges, etc. on its payroll. Hence, Escobar and many other Colombian drug lords were pulling strings in every level of the Colombian government because many of the political candidates whom they backed financially were eventually elected. Although the Medellín Cartel was only established in the early 1970s, it expanded after Escobar met several drug lords on a farm in April 1978, and by the end of 1978, they had transported some 19,000 kilograms of cocaine to the United States. Soon, the demand for cocaine greatly increased in the United States, which led to Escobar organizing more smuggling shipments, routes, and distribution networks in South Florida, California, Puerto Rico, and other parts of the country. He and cartel co-founder Carlos Leder worked together to develop a new transshipment point in the Bahamas, an island called Norman's Cay about 350 kilometers southeast of the Florida coast. Escobar and Robert Vesco purchased most of the land on the island, which included a 1-kilometer airstrip, a harbor, a hotel, houses, boats, and aircraft, and they built a refrigerated warehouse to store the cocaine. According to his brother, Escobar did not purchase Norman's Cay. It was instead a sole venture of Leder's. From 1978 to 1982, this was used as a central smuggling route for the Medellín Cartel. With the enormous profits generated by this route, Escobar was soon able to purchase 20 square kilometers of land in Antioquia for several $1 million, on which he built the Hacienda Nápoles. The luxury house he created contained a zoo, with more than 200 species of exotic animals for the region, such as hippos, giraffes, elephants, zebras, and ostriches, all introduced into the country as a result of bribes to the government entity Indirana and the customs authorities. A lake, a sculpture garden, a private bull ring, and other amenities for his family and the cartel. Escobar made a show of this by producing a propaganda report about his hacienda. Escobar was also among the world's billionaires due to his immense fortune invested in buildings, homes, automobiles, and estates, listed as the 7th richest man in the world according to Forbes. At the height of his power, Escobar was involved in philanthropy in Colombia and paid handsomely for the staff of his cocaine lab. Escobar spent millions developing some of Medellin's poorest neighborhoods. He built housing complexes, parks, football stadiums, hospitals, schools, and churches. His most famous charity work was the Medellin Without Slums neighborhood, aimed at people living in slums at the Medellin Municipal Dump. Shortly before the presidential and regional elections of 1982 began, Escobar realized that he had to create a cover to protect his lucrative drug trade. He began to cultivate an image of a respectable man, making contacts with politicians, financiers, lawyers, etc. Considered until then a Robin Hood paisa, due to his help to the poor of Medellin, Escobar would enter politics with the help of Jairo Ortega Ramirez as a congressman representing Antioquia through the Liberal Renewal movement, although his godfather in politics was the liberal chieftain from Tolima Department, Alberto Santofimio Botero. This triumvirate initially supported the candidacy of Luis Carlos Galán, a dissident of the Liberal Party, for his new liberalism movement. While campaigning politically in Medellin, Galán learned through his assistant Ivan Marulanda that people whose fortunes were of dubious origin had joined the liberal renovation movement of people whose fortunes were of dubious origin. In Medellin's Barrio Park, Galán, without mentioning Escobar's name, publicly expelled him, rejecting the support of Escobar and others similar to him, involved in shady business dealings. Despite the opposition and warnings of his partners, in 1982, he successfully entered the Colombian Congress. Although only an alternate, he was automatically granted parliamentary immunity and the right to a diplomatic passport under Colombian law. At the same time, Escobar was gradually becoming a public figure, and because of his charitable work, he was known as Robin Hood Paisa. He alleged once in an interview that his fortune came from a bicycle rental company he founded when he was 16 years old. Escobar's arrest in 1976 was investigated by Lara Bonilla's subordinates. This confirmed in Brian Ross's September 5, 1983 report on the U.S. television network NBC. A few months later, Escobar was publicly expelled from Congress and his visa to the United States was canceled, while Judge Gustavo Zuluaga Serna issued an arrest warrant against Escobar for the murder of the two Diaz agents who had captured him in 1976. Although Escobar fought back, he announced his retirement from politics in January 1984. In late 1986, Colombia's Supreme Court declared the previous extradition treaty illegal due to being signed by a presidential delegation, not the president. Escobar's victory over the judiciary was short-lived. It is believed that Escobar was the one who betrayed later, causing his capture on February 4, 1987. Death Escobar faced threats from the Colombian police, the U.S. government, and his rivals, the Cali Cartel. On the 2nd of December 1993, Escobar was found in a house in a middle-class residential area of Medellin by Colombian special forces, using technology provided by the United States, which allowed them to trace Escobar's location after he made a call to his family. Police tried to arrest Escobar, but the situation quickly escalated to an exchange of gunfire. Escobar was shot and killed while trying to escape from the roof, along with a bodyguard who was also shot. He was hit by bullets in the torso and feet, and a bullet which struck him in the head, killing him. This sparked debate about whether he killed himself or whether he was shot and killed.